You noted that my vice chair is not here yet. We are in the midst of a series of 5 votes that have just kicked off. So we've already had to reschedule this nomination hearing for Mr. Kirkland once. We don't want to do that. This is an important position that we'd like to be able to advance through our process. And so as members kind of hop in and hop out, we appreciate your indulgence, and please take that as no sign of disrespect or disinterest in the nominee and the position. I want to welcome you, Mr. Kirkland. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Congratulations on your nomination. I appreciate the visit that we had a couple of weeks ago, and I look forward to continuing conversation and dialogue today and then beyond. The Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs is an important position at the Interior Department. Your job, if confirmed, will be to assist and support Secretary Burgum in fulfilling the United States trust responsibility to the federally recognized American Indians and Alaska Native tribes and individual Indian trust beneficiaries across the country. This trust responsibility is the cornerstone of federal Indian law and policy. It is the legal and moral basis for upholding tribal sovereignty and rights of self-governance of tribes, the trust management of over 55 million acres of Indian trust lands, and the provision of basic social, financial, and educational services for Native people through 3 bureaus: Indian Affairs, Indian Education, and the Trust Funds Administration that you will lead. So just let that sink in for a minute. You probably have, but for all the people that are gathered here in this room who are here to support you, this is a big deal. The gravity of this responsibility is a big deal. You will be called upon to understand the challenges that American Indians and Alaska Natives face in our country and to work to provide solutions. Your decision on matters before your office, whether approval of a land into trust application, federal recognition of a tribe, the go-ahead on an energy development project or gaming operation, or the building of critical infrastructure such as housing, water, or roads, they'll matter. They will matter to the lives of Native people. There are treaties and very unique laws to navigate, not to mention ongoing debates about education, economic empowerment, public safety, and tribal jurisdiction. There are over 500 federally recognized tribes to serve, with more than 200 of those in my home state of Alaska, all with different histories and cultures. The cliche that one size fits all does not reflect or fit Indian country, and I think we recognize that. The job of Assistant Secretary is not an easy one, and right now the department and the bureaus you would oversee are in a major flux. The workforce has been drastically reduced, nearly 20% according to the numbers that we have from the department, and the recent budget proposal for Indian Affairs programs is unserious at best. I think we've got to do better. When we talked in my office, you described yourself as a strong conduit between Native people and their needs and the White House and the rest of the administration, and I look forward to hearing more about how you can be a strong advocate for all Native peoples and how you will make their lives better. We've got a lot of issues to work on, but I just want to highlight a few here. First, and this was one that we had discussion about, but it's the probate backlog. 7 years. 7 years is absolutely too long to wait when a family risks losing their home simply because of the death of a parent or a grandparent. We also have to speed up the relocation of Native villages that have been threatened by a changing climate. In Alaska, we've got whole communities. I talk a lot about Newtok. Some of the staff visited the river community of Huslia. They're literally falling into rivers, as Huslia is, or the ocean, as Newtok is. And the survival of these villages depends on continuing and building on federal assistance. There are more than 1,000 contaminated sites on Native-owned lands that the federal government is legally responsible for cleaning up in Alaska. We need to eliminate this public health threat and be able to redevelop these lands where it makes sense. And of course, it goes without saying that we must continue to protect our most vulnerable populations, women and children, through the implementation of VAWA 2022, increased law enforcement, support for tribal courts, the Tawahi Initiative, and reducing cases of MMIW. And of course, these are not just Alaska issues. These are issues faced by Native communities across the country. So, Mr. Kirkland, I'm looking forward to hearing more about your vision at the Office of Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs this afternoon. I expect committee members are going to have additional questions for you after today's hearing, and we would look forward to your responses to those as well. So, again, thank you for being here. Congratulations to you. What we will do is we will hold for Senator Schatz' comments when he comes. But at this time, I would turn to Representative Brian Jack to introduce Mr. Kirkland. Representative, thank you for coming over to the Senate this afternoon. I know that you've probably had to rearrange your day around this committee schedule, so I appreciate your nimble abilities as well. If you would proceed with your introduction and welcome.
Thank you, Chairwoman Murkowski, and thank you to yourself, Vice Chairman Schatz, and Senators Hoeven, Daines, Mullin, Rounds, Moran, Cantwell, Cortez, Masto, Smith, and Luján for your service on the Committee on Indian Affairs, and thank you for providing me with the honor of introducing Mr. William Billy Kirkland III at today's hearing. I acknowledge that I'm a member of what some consider to be the inferior chamber of Congress, so I respectfully ask that you do not hold that against my best friend, Mr. Kirkland. Billy Kirkland has many wonderful attributes, but there are three defining qualities that will make him an exceptional Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. He is selfless, he is loyal, and he is effective. Billy routinely sacrifices his time and resources for anyone in need. Many of his family and friends are in the audience and watching at home, and each of us has a story about how Billy always puts us, others, before himself. This was especially felt by our country's Native American tribes during his service in the administration. During our time working together in President Trump's first term, Billy routinely devoted his early mornings, his entire day, and his late evenings to providing our country's tribal leaders with meaningful moments and impactful interactions at the White House. As Special Assistant to President Trump for Intergovernmental Affairs, Billy was responsible for managing the White House's engagement with tribal governments, and through his leadership, Billy organized one of the most inspirational events of President Trump's first term, the ceremony honoring code talkers from the Navajo Nation, Billy's own tribe, and the Oval Office. During his time in the Trump administration, Billy's relentless focus was to implement President Trump's efforts to improve the quality of life for Native Americans across all 50 states, and in that endeavor, he worked closely with Congress. He worked with you and your colleagues to enact the Ashland, Mike, Amber Alert, and Indian Country Act, which protects Native Americans. He worked with your colleagues and yourself, Chairwoman Murkowski, to enact Savannah's Act, which addresses the scourge of missing or murdered Native American women and men. And he worked with your colleagues and yourself, Senator Cortez Masto, to enact Non-Invisible Act of 2019, which combats violent crime within tribal lands. He also worked across President Trump's administration to identify opportunity zones to increase employment opportunities and access to capital for our Native American communities. Throughout each and every one of these efforts, there was one constant. You never saw Billy Kirkland's name in the press. He felt then, as he does today, that the only credit that matters is facilitating better lives for the millions of Americans whose ancestors inhabited this land thousands of years before many of our own. To this day, I have never seen Billy Kirkland meet a stranger. Whether he is sitting with a tribal elder or chatting with a staffer in the hallway, he treats everyone with the same respect and the same decency. Billy makes people feel seen and valued. And that is something we all know you cannot teach. People trust him because he is genuine and because he is kind. More than anything, Billy is a family man. His wife, Paige, and their three wonderful children are his foundation. And Billy carries that identity into everything he does, and his perspective is grounded in what matters most and informs how he will lead the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs as Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. Effectiveness is an attribute all of us demand from our elected and appointed officials, and in Billy, we have someone who has the ability to enter office with immediate respect from decision makers across President Trump's administration. His voice and the credibility attached to it will ensure the needs of Indian country are swiftly addressed and solved. I close recognizing the powerful symbolism with Billy's nomination. Nearly 200 years ago, our government enacted legislation that led to the displacement of tens of thousands of Native Americans. Native Americans in Georgia and many other states were forcibly removed from their ancestral homeland. Yet today, 200 years later, the first Native American from Georgia, has been appointed and awaits confirmation to lead this distinguished office. Additionally, never before has a member of the Navajo Nation, whose members bravely helped us win World War II, been appointed to lead this important post. As such, this distinguished panel has an opportunity to make history today by advancing Mr. William Billy Kirkland III's nomination to serve as the next United States Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. And I thank you for your time, your consideration, and the opportunity to support my best friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jack. We appreciate those comments, and we send our good wishes to the other chamber. Thank you so much. We will now swear you in, Mr. Kirkland, before you testify before the committee. If you will rise, please. The rules of the committee, which apply to all nominees, require that they be sworn in connection with their testimony. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give to the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Before you begin your statement, I will ask you 3 questions that are asked to each nominee that comes before the committee. Will you be available to appear before this committee and other congressional committees to represent departmental positions and respond to issues of concern to the Congress? Yes. Are you aware of any personal holdings, investments, or interests that could constitute a conflict or create an appearance of such a conflict should you be confirmed and assume the office to which you have been nominated by the President?
No.
Are you involved, or do you have any assets held in blind trusts?
No.
So, Mr. Kirkland, thank you. You may proceed with your testimony. If you would like to introduce your family, I think I've got a suspicion that there's a few of them behind you today, but we welcome them to the committee. Extraordinarily well-behaved, I might add. We're going to try not to make this too boring for you while you're sitting there supporting your dad, but we know that our nominees all have hard jobs, and the families that stand behind them to allow them to serve are very important and also due respect. So with that, Mr. Kirkland, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Senator. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for the time I got to spend with you and your staff. Also, while not here, I'd like to thank Chairman Schatz. I know he'll be here soon. I can thank him in person as well. I know that your staff's put a lot of time in to make sure the important work of this committee is done and executed, so I thank them as well. I greatly enjoyed the opportunity to meet with most of you and your staff, and over the past few weeks, it was both a humbling and exciting experience. I would like to thank Congressman Brian Jack, who we quickly sent to the lesser house. The lower house, maybe he can refine his chamber a little bit after spending some time with you fine ladies and members. But I'd like to thank Brian Jack for his friendship and his introduction. You mentioned my mother and father being here. I would like to thank my mother, Gloria, my father, Major Bill Kirkland. I'll come clean. Today is his birthday, and we had a huge surprise party for him back home that we're going to have to postpone. And maybe actually, now that this happened, we can plan it as well. My sister is also in attendance. Most importantly, I'd like to thank my wife, Paige, for being here with our 3 children. I'd introduce them, but I think you might actually hear from them depending on how long this committee hearing lasts. Will, Carter, and Elle. I'd also like to thank all the tribal leaders that were here in support of my nomination today. I got to meet with 50 plus yesterday. We had a great reception at the Capitol Hill Club. I'd like to specifically point out Speaker Curley from the Navajo Nation, who's here. President Nygren was here yesterday from the Navajo Nation. He had to get back to Navajo, but he was supportive as well. I really appreciate their support. That means a lot. It's an honor to be here today as President Donald Trump's nominee to serve Indian country as Assistant Secretary to the Department of Interior. I was given advice, and I've looked back and watched many of these hearings, and it seems pretty typical that when a Native American addresses this committee, they typically introduce themselves in their native tongue. Unfortunately, I'm no master of linguistics. If you ask my high school English or Spanish teachers, or college for that matter, they'd probably tell you I wasn't the most, it wasn't a talent or gift of mine. So my aunties also gave up on me ever mastering the Navajo language. I'm sure they hoped that I could at least introduce myself and give my clans here today. If I did that, I might take up the majority of your time and you might miss your remaining votes on the floor. So I'm gonna simply say Yatahe y'all, and that's Southern Navajo for hello. My name is Billy Kirkland. I'm a proud member of the Navajo Nation. I was born just north of the Four Sacred Mountains. I'm the son of a Daines mother and a father who served over 20 years in the U.S. Army. My mother's story is all too common in Indian country. She was taken from her ancestral homelands during a period known as the Termination Era. She taught me strength and perseverance, traits that define the Native communities, especially the Navajo. My father, through his military career, taught me commitment, sacrifice, and the desire to serve. Growing up, I was given unique perspectives and experiences due to my father's career. I relocated over 15 times before graduating high school, from one coast to the other, even overseas. Starting over in new environments with different circumstances became second nature. But I learned no matter where in the world my father's job took my family, that I was Daines. My mother taught me this. She taught me about Kit Carson and the Long Walk. She taught me about heroic leaders like Manolito and the legacy they wanted to leave our people. She helped develop a deep respect for my heritage that has been passed down through my clan relationships. I spent many summer days in Luján chasing sheep and hauling water to my Grandma Susie's sheep camp. Because like on many reservations, even today, water is scarce and electricity is still just a dream. It is where I learned firsthand the infrastructure struggles that are still far too common in Indian country today. I was able to develop an undeniable connection with the land and the people, but my family has also experienced the dark realities of reservation life, whether it be alcoholism, depression, or lack of opportunity. I've seen firsthand the lack of opportunity, specifically economic opportunity on my own reservation. When the Navajo generating station was shut down in northern Arizona, it devastated jobs in an already struggling community. I know we can and must do better. I believe there is a way to bring meaningful opportunity to Indian country through balance, while honoring and preserving our Native heritage and traditional ways. If confirmed, I understand the mission of Indian Affairs at the Department of Interior is to uphold a meaningful government-to-government relationship with federally recognized tribes, Alaska Natives, and ANCs, to enact policies that support self-determination and tribal sovereignty, and to steward trust assets while maintaining the federal trust responsibility that aims to support the social, cultural, and economic self-sufficiency of tribal communities across Indian country and Alaska. While the Office of Indian Affairs has no official oversight, we will be advocates for our Native Hawaiian brothers and sisters. We will work to ensure that their legal and moral obligations are carried out on their behalf. If confirmed, I will work with this committee to uphold the federal trust responsibilities. More importantly, I will work in partnerships with tribal governments, tribal leaders, Alaska Natives, and ANCs. I believe they know best what their people need and know how to meet those needs better than any federal agency or bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. During my time in the White House, I was proud to work closely with the Department of Interior and Office of Indian Affairs on a range of issues. Our administration was the first to formally recognize the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. President Trump established Operation Lady Justice and later signed into law Senate Bill 227, Savannah's Act, and Senate Bill 982, the Not Invisible Act. I'd like to thank the members of the committee who I know put a lot of time and effort into those bills. I was privileged to be a part of the first administration to recognize and honor and host Native Code Talkers in the Oval Office. We worked to ensure over 350 opportunity zones were included in Native American lands. We formalized the DOI's opioid task force within the Office of Justice Services and authorized the Ashley Lynn Mike Amber Alert in Indian country. We worked to ensure Indian country was fully funded in the CARES Act. These were all meaningful accomplishments, but much work remains to be done. My prior experience in the White House and business and in government relations has given me unique tools and relationships to help serve all of Indian country, Alaska Natives, ANCs, and Native Hawaiians. I know that the collaboration and meaningful consultation with tribal leaders must be a top priority. I will also lean on this committee's expertise and experience. I've reached out to seek advice from tribal leaders and past assistant secretaries like Assistant Secretary Sweeney and Assistant Secretary Larry Echohawk. If confirmed, I will continue to do so. I will continue to rely on the knowledge of tribal leaders and this committee in order to gain their input to most effectively fulfill the duties of the office of Assistant Secretary. As this committee knows, Indian country is not homogeneous. One size does not fit all. Each tribe is distinct. Each has its own identity, history, and needs. If confirmed, my goal will be able to meet those needs and further advance the self-governance and self-determination they so desire. If confirmed, we will honor the diversity of Indian country by ensuring our policies are responsive, respectful, and rooted in partnership and meet our trust responsibilities. I'm happy to accept any questions and appreciate y'all having me here today.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkland, and thank you to you and your family for your willingness to serve. For the information of everybody here and everybody watching, we are in the middle of a vote series, so the chair and various members will be coming in and out. That does not diminish the importance of this hearing, just that we can't miss a vote. I'm going to give my opening statement and then roll right into my questions. Again, thank you to the nominee and to your family for joining us. Today we examine the nomination of William H. Billy Kirkland to be the 15th Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, the highest-ranking Senate-confirmed official in Indian Affairs at the Department of the Interior. If confirmed, Mr. Kirkland will be expected by statute and by tradition to fulfill the federal government's trust and treaty obligations and advocate for the advancement of those obligations across the entire administration. Here in the Senate, our charge under the Constitution is to provide advice and consent through vigorous vetting and a clear-eyed review of qualifications, as well as Mr. Kirkland's preparedness to conduct himself as a fiduciary, that is, his ability and duty to act in the best interests of American Indians and Alaska Natives and to respect the federal government's special political and trust relationship with the Native Hawaiian community. So this is not a courtesy review. As the committee with primary jurisdiction over Indian Affairs, Native Hawaiian, and Alaska Native Affairs, we expect the Assistant Secretary to carry out the trust responsibility, maintain government-to-government relationships, honor tribal sovereignty, and promote self-determination and self-governance. These duties are a given no matter which party occupies the White House. The Assistant Secretary must also have a deep respect for federal Indian law and policy and demonstrate unimpeachable ethics and a commitment to transparency. Based on these metrics and after a thorough review of his questionnaires, I have some clarifying questions which I will be asking. Specifically, I'll be asking Mr. Kirkland to explain his qualifications to serve in this position, and we've talked about this. I will ask him questions to assure that his close involvement in political campaigns at the state and federal levels, which are not disqualifying, will not affect his ability to serve the best interests of Indian country, and I'll probe Mr. Kirkland's willingness to comply with federal ethics laws and agency guidance throughout his tenure. As I've said many times before, this committee's bipartisanship is its strength. We should agree that the federal trust responsibilities to Indian tribes is one of the highest moral and legal obligations that we have, and it is our duty to ensure that the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs is held to that exacting standard. And so I'm just going to ask a series of questions. They're a little tough, but they are not gotchas, okay? Just to get you ready. In your ethics paperwork, you reserve the right to seek conflict of interest and personal financial interest waivers under current law. I'd like to understand that a little bit better, and I just want to put the question directly to you. Will you pledge not to request or accept any ethics waivers?
I pledge to work with the Office of Ethics, the career staffers within the Department of Interior to make sure whatever I'm doing or whatever I do is always ethically in line with whatever law is in place and remain ethically compliant in all ways.
Sure, I get that. You'll work with the lawyers in the department to figure out how to comply with the statute. My question is, you're going to have the discretion about whether or not to ask for a waiver. And that is not up to the lawyers. You get to say, I would like not, I think I have a conflict here. I think it's close enough to a conflict here that you just say, let me stay out of this. Let me build a firewall and let other people handle it. And so you don't have to check with the lawyers to say, I'm not going to be seeking any waivers of the ethics laws. It's up to you to decide that. You don't have to confer with the lawyers. You only confer with the lawyers when you're saying, hey, would it be okay if I got a waiver from the ethics laws in order to work on this thing where I could be at least conflict adjacent? So I'm just going to put the question to you a second time. This is not a trick question. It just seems to me, if I were you coming into this position, I would just say, look, if anything looks close to an ethical conflict, I'm not even going to check. I'm going to recuse.
Sure, Senator, I appreciate your question. I'm not aware of any ethical conflicts or any waivers being requested, and I will continue to make sure that I'm compliant in all ways moving forward.
Your 2025 ethics paperwork says you, quote, plan to sell your political consulting group, the PWK group, to Potomac South, a registered lobbying firm. What's the status of that sale? Are you going to execute the sale before you take?
If lucky enough to be confirmed, if honored enough to serve in the position, and this committee decides my worthiness to be confirmed, yes, sir, everything will be ethically handled and passed over before I take office.
And you'll provide the committee with a copy of the purchase agreement for that sale?
Happy to remain compliant in all ways and do whatever I'm asked to do, yes, sir.
And can I confirm, again, I'm just running the traps here. I'm not
sure.
making an
No problem.
accusation. Okay. Can I confirm that neither you nor any of your family will retain a financial interest in the firm?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I want to ask you about equal treatment of tribes. In 1994, Congress made clear that all tribes, whether recognized by Congress, the executive branch, or the federal courts, are entitled to the, quote, same privileges and immunities as another. That's 25 U.S.C. 5123F. That means that no matter how or when they were federally recognized, all federally recognized tribes have the same seat at the table with the U.S. government. Mr. Kirkland, yes or no, do you agree that all federally recognized tribes are entitled to the same privileges and immunities regardless of how or when they were acknowledged?
I believe that all federally recognized tribes have a treaty obligation that the U.S. government has to respect and follow the law in terms of how those obligations have been recorded.
Yeah, but this is a little more of a specific question, is that the law establishes that it doesn't matter how or when you were recognized. Administrative process recently, legislative process 100 years ago. If you're federally recognized, then you are treated equally by the Department of the Interior. And my question is, will you abide by that legal principle?
I look forward to abiding by all legal principles and following.
Okay, do you agree that that's a legal principle?
I'm unfamiliar with that particular statute and term. I'm, as you have pointed out and will continue to point out, I'm sure not a legal scholar, but I look forward to working with the department attorneys and in the office of the solicitor to review anything else that I need to further update myself on.
Okay, this is going to be the toughest one, and we had a conversation about this in private. You were a senior presidential campaign advisor in 2020 in Georgia, and I just want to say, it is okay to work as a political operative. Some of my best friends are political operatives. Very few of my best friends are political operatives who are Republicans, but it's fine. That's not disqualifying. But there was reporting that was kind of ambiguous as to a specific sort of event. And so I just want to hear you under oath. As a senior presidential campaign advisor in 2020, did you participate in, direct, or have any personal knowledge of the president's Georgia pressure campaign, his phone call with the Georgia Secretary of State, or the elector scheme?
I'll just review, as you said, under oath. I'm happy to reaffirm that, but also just rehash our conversation in your office.
Sorry, reaffirm. You said reaffirm that. I'm not trying to be tricky. I just want to.
No, I understand. You mentioned that we had this conversation once before, and I'm happy to echo that conversation. Never have I talked to any of the press that reported those incidents. I was not involved in the conversation that took place. I was not in the vicinity or in the room with the president or on a telephone.
Thank you. I suppose it depends who you ask, whether that was the tough one or this is the toughest one. We talked a little bit about this, and let me put it this way. I make a sort of a half joke about how we in the United States Senate are probably not even qualified to be our own LAs or legislative directors because of the deep subject matter expertise. So it's not a knock on someone to say that they may lack the deep subject matter expertise necessary for a particular position. And I think the knock on you would be that you're not deeply ensconced in Indian law. You don't have 30 years of tribal leadership. You don't, and you've demonstrated capabilities in other areas. But my question is how we're going to work around. I remember talking to Jim Bridenstine, who was a member of Congress who ended up being the NASA administrator. And most NASA administrators had a deep scientific background. I talked to him about it. And he ended up being a good NASA administrator. Why? Because he knew what he didn't know, right? He ended up surrounding himself by a bunch of scientists and not always doing what they asked, but relying on their expertise. And we know a lot about that in the United States Senate because you just can't know everything. But I think it is fair to say you do not possess deep expertise in this space. So how do you plan to work around that? It's not a knock on your leadership capacity, but I just do think that if you look at the people who have held this position, a lot of them have 20, 30 years on a CV that says, oh, that makes sense. And for you, you have a nexus with and a passion for tribal issues, but I want to be satisfied that if you're not in personal possession of the expertise, that you're going to figure out a way to find it and rely upon it. So could you speak to that?
Senator, I appreciate your question. As I mentioned, you were handling the duties of the Senate and voting, and we're here and missed my opening statement. I mentioned that the process of getting to know your staffs and meeting with you was both exciting and humbling, whether it was questioning ever so politely qualifications or even the ability to do jobs or where I was from or how I was raised, or even if having the ability to speak Navajo almost kept me from being considered seriously in this job. So like I say, very, very humbling experience. In terms of qualifications, while both in business and in my government service in the White House, I'll start there specifically, we were the outwardly facing office to, sorry, I thought for a second there my 2-year-old had escaped. We were the outwardly facing office for all non-federally elected officials. So that included managing coordination and relationships with 50 governors, 99 state legislative bodies, 7,386 state legislators. On the county government side, that was 33,144 counties, roughly over 19,000 elected county commissioners and county board members. My background, both in the White House and in business, includes managing complex issues, managing multiple personalities, people, subject matters, building coalitions, navigating difficult issues within a diverse constituency, managing budgets, coordinating with multiple stakeholders. You mentioned political campaigns or marketing for that matter. In a campaign or a marketing campaign, typically you've got a really set time period to be successful. You have to identify key priorities and move quickly to make those priorities successful. And you don't have a 6-year span to do that. Oftentimes you have months or even a year, but there's a deadline. And if you're not successful, you win or you lose. And if you lose, you don't last in the business long. Yeah. Whether that's for getting new clients or winning an election, I plan to take those skills I learned in both my government experience and my personal life to serve Indian affairs. I think that we're in a time where a lot of issues that need to be met, they're timely, and those are the skill sets that I want to take to serve Indian country in this office of the Assistant Secretary.
Thank you.
I'm going to defer to Senator Daines. We're all going to be popping in and out with these votes, and I'm going to be here for a while, so we'll go to Senator Daines.
Chair Murkowski, thank you. I appreciate my colleagues, Senator Schatz, with some of his questions about what qualification needed for this job, but just for what it's worth, I got a picture of the org chart here. you will literally be overseeing a group of thousands of employees reporting to you. And with all due respect, I don't think we have to be subject matter experts deep in all these topics. What really this is about is leadership and managing a large and complex organization. So with all due respect to my colleague, Senator Schatz, I think leadership qualities, passion and mission are probably the most important part of what it takes when you're at the top of an organization like this. So I just wanted to make that comment. Mr. Kirkland, thank you for coming before this committee today. I appreciate your willingness to serve. I appreciate your family's willingness to serve with you in this. And it's a very important position. I look forward to working with you. The Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs is tasked with fulfilling the government's trust responsibilities to both our tribal nations as well as supporting self-determination. Unfortunately, as I spend a lot of time with my tribal leaders across Montana, they've told me time and time again that the Bureau of Indian Affairs is falling short in that very important mission. Public safety is the number one concern. I hear this from Indian country all the time, and frankly, on the ground, it is beyond a full-blown crisis in Montana. Cartel members are exploiting jurisdictional loopholes and often operating with impunity on Montana's reservations. Tribal law enforcement are trying to police some areas that are larger than Rhode Island with only a handful of officers and insufficient resources. Going back about 10 years, drug overdoses in Montana have skyrocketed, and deaths in Indian country are 3 times higher than the rest of Montana. I appreciate my colleague, Senator Smith, for working with me to introduce the Protection for Reservation Occupants Against Trafficking and Evasive Communication Today Act. This bill is going to help give tribal law enforcement the tools they need to police their communities, stop the flow of deadly drugs on their reservations like fentanyl and meth. Mr. Kirkland, will you commit to working with me to enhance public safety? Hearing this is one of the top issues I'm hearing from my tribal leaders, to enhance public safety in any country and to help tribal law enforcement get the resources they so badly need.
Senator, I appreciate your question, and I enjoyed spending time with you and your office recently with your staff. I've also enjoyed visiting your state and with the Crow a few years ago with the former administration. As you know and are well aware, law enforcement and public safety are a priority of this administration. It is something that Secretary Burgum takes very seriously, and I look forward to working with you to advance that within your state, with your tribes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kirkland. And you've got a good boss in Doug Burgum as well. He's been a dear friend for many years personally with me. I remember he chatted with me one day when he was thinking about running for public office and asked me, what do you think about running for governor someday in North Dakota? That's a great idea, Doug. You should do it.
And Senator, not to go too far off topic, but literally walking in, a good friend also said, Secretary Perdue said to make sure to say hello as well.
Oh, thank you. It's great. No, and likewise.
So for the record, I can say that I said hello.
You did, for the record, say hello back at you, all right? Let me talk about the water settlement. This is another high priority for us in Montana. You know, Montana is a semi-arid state. I'll tell folks back home that D.C. gets more rain than Seattle does. Check it out. There's more annual rainfall here than Seattle. So this is a swampy, wet place. You know, about 40 inches of rain. Out in Montana, we're semi-arid. It's between 12 and 16 inches of rain per year. So yes, we've got beautiful rivers, and we're a headwater state of the Missouri, but our livelihoods depend on water. I envy Chairman Murkowski in Alaska. She's surrounded by water. She's got a lot of water. Alaska has some good precipitation, and we're pretty arid up in Montana. So water settlements is a big deal. The Fort Belknap are the original Winters tribe, and their settlement has been over a century. A century is over 100 years in the making. After decades of negotiation and strong leadership from President Jeff Stiffarm, who's been a great friend and ally and a courageous president, we're almost across the finish line to settle a 100-year issue. Without a settlement, farmers, ranchers, water users are left in limbo, and these issues were going to end up being litigated in court. This will help bring clean drinking water to the reservation and provide certainty for not only tribal users, but non-tribal water users alike. This settlement has already passed the Senate twice and has unanimous support from the tribe, the state of Montana, relevant counties, and the entire Montana delegation. Mr. Kirkland, do you agree it is important to enact this agreement to settle a 100-year dispute, to close out the last water settlement in Montana, and when you work with Congress to get this done?
We want to work with Congress to make sure that we comply with all treaty obligations, to honor our trust responsibility with tribes. Water is vital to life. In my opening statement, mentioned I've got many keen memories of having to haul water to my grandma Susie's sheep camp because it's not there. I mean, oftentimes driving 30, 40 miles to find water. So I look forward to working with you and your staff on your water settlement issues.
Thank you. I have a closing sentence, and then I'll turn it over back to the chairman because I'm out of time. But I wanted to thank you for your comments, and I want to encourage you and urge you to engage with Montana tribes once confirmed to cut through the bureaucratic red tape to help them support and enhance their communities. We've got a real chance to make a difference in Indian country, and I'm confident in your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Daines. Senator Luján.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kirkland, from 2009 to 2013, you worked for Ralph Reed's Faith and Freedom Coalition. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Was Ralph Reed a champion of tribes?
When I worked for Ralph Reed,
That's not my question. My question is Ralph Reed a champion of tribes?
Sir, I worked for the Faith and Freedom Coalition.
Do you have an opinion about Ralph Reed?
I have an opinion that I work.
Let me ask you a different question. Ralph Reed was a business partner of Jack Abramoff. Both were accused of defrauding and disadvantaging tribal gaming enterprises for financial gain in the early 2000s, something this committee conducted extensive oversight on and produced a 350-page report. Why did you choose to go work for him after that?
Thank you for your question, Senator. When I worked for the Faith and Freedom Coalition, we focused on working with and educating voters on matters of faith that were important to the faith-based community. I've never met Jack Abramoff or conducted any business with him.
My question, Mr. Kirkland, is why did you choose to go back to work for Jack or for Ralph after that?
Senator, I never chose to go back to work for Jack.
Did you accept the job?
Senator, I've never met Jack Abramoff.
Not Jack. Mr. Reed, that's the group you said you worked for.
I worked for the Faith and Freedom
Why
Coalition.
did you choose to go work for him?
Why did I choose to work for Ralph Reed? I worked for the Faith and Freedom Coalition, of which he happened to be the chairperson at the time.
You didn't work for Ralph?
I worked for the Faith and Freedom Coalition, sir.
Do you have an opinion about Jack Abramoff?
I never met Jack Abramoff.
Do you have an opinion of him?
I don't know
Do
Jack
you think
Abramoff.
it was okay that he defrauded tribes?
I don't think it's okay to defraud anyone. I've never met Jack Abramoff.
I appreciate that. We're on the same page there. Mr. Kirkland, you say in your testimony that when you worked at the White House, you worked to ensure that the Indian country was fully included in CARES Act, piece of legislation I was proud to work on. The CARES Act, of course, was a bipartisan piece of legislation to respond to COVID-19, to the pandemic, which began in late 2019 and early 2000. I see from your committee questionnaire that you worked at the White House from January 2017 to August 2019. Is that correct?
Yes.
When was the CARES Act passed?
Sir, when I left the White House, I worked on the campaign and remained in close contact with the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs on tribal
Mr.
relations.
Kirkland, my question is, do you know when the CARES Act was passed?
It was after I left the White House.
It was March of 2020, after you left the White House. Why do you take credit for working on that after you left?
Because I worked with the White House to do that.
Who did you work with here in Congress?
I worked within the White House. I worked with Doug Holscher.
Did you work with anyone here in Congress to get that passed?
No, sir.
No? My colleague who had the seat before me, Tom Udall, was the vice chair of this committee, worked to ensure it got passed. Are you aware that during your time in the White House that it was the House of Representatives that passed the CARES Act? The Senate had not yet passed it?
I'm very aware, sir, that the two bodies in Congress passed bills, yes.
No, are you aware that the House passed it before you left the White House and the Senate passed it after you left the White House?
That's excellent. Thank you for telling me that.
Did you work on the House legislation or the Senate legislation?
Sir,
With your advocacy with the White House?
I said I worked With the White House.
Yeah, did you work with the White House on the House legislation or the Senate legislation?
I worked with the White House on formulating and ensuring that all of Indian country was included in the CARES Act.
What did the White House have to do with passing the CARES Act in the Congress?
Sir, we met with and talked with and consulted with tribes across the country, not just federally recognized tribes, but also Alaska ANCs, and that was meaningful consultation. It was lots of time and effort to ensure that they were all included in the act.
Appreciate that, Mr. Kirkland. Is providing funding to American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians a part of America's trust responsibility to tribes?
I think ensuring that the money that Congress appropriates to the Office of Indian Affairs is very important. I think it is very important to the office to prioritize how best to allocate those funds that Congress allocates to the Office of Indian Affairs.
I appreciate that.
To ensure that we're
Mr. Kirkland, my time's about running out. I'm sorry to be rude. Mr. Kirkland, yesterday you're aware that Congress passed a rescissions package. So as you're in your position, Mr. Russell Vought has already said he's sending another one, and Congress really, it doesn't matter what they say about this. The executive branch is going to do it. Are you going to stand up and speak up to this administration if they choose to rescind appropriations passed by this Congress for tribal communities across America? The answer is yes or no.
Sir, once I'm confirmed, which I hope to be.
Okay, the answer is not yes. Do you think the administration cutting billions from national programs that support Indian country, Native American communities' lives lives up to America's trust responsibility?
Sir, I look forward, once confirmed, to working with you, your staff, this committee, and most importantly, tribal leaders to prioritize the money that Congress appropriates for the Office of Indian Affairs to make sure it's best and most wisely invested.
I appreciate that, Mr. Kirkland. Right now, you stand alone in this administration because yesterday, all my Republican colleagues, most of them, voted to get this done. And Russell Vought has said he's sending another package before the sun even came up this morning. So you're alone in this. I hope that you are a man of your word and you speak up and stand up to this because we need some strong voices. And I hope that we have one in you, sir. You also talked about water, which I appreciate very much. It matters to us. Mr. Kirkland, do you know how many Navajo brothers and sisters are waiting to have water delivered from the Navajo Gallup Water Project?
I can't give you that.
I'll give it to you. I have it.
I look
250,000.
forward for you giving it to me.
It's 250,000, sir. Mr. Kirkland, do you know how many recognized Indian water right settlements are in New Mexico?
I'm sure you have that number for me. I look forward to hearing it.
I'll share that with you. Mr. Kirkland, do you know how much funding is needed for the FY26 budget to keep the Navajo Gallup Water Project on track?
I'll look forward to hearing.
$175 million. Do you know that if this fails, it would be the first Indian water right settlement to fail in America's history?
No, sir, I was not aware of that.
It would be. Mr. Kirkland, do you know how much the president's budget, President Donald Trump, allocated for the Navajo Gallup Water Project?
Not offhand, no, sir.
$0. Is that okay?
I'm sorry?
Is that okay that the budget had $0 for the Navajo Nation water pipeline settlement?
Sir, if it was, I hope that we can put trillions of dollars into not just the Navajo's budget, but the Office of Indian Affairs. The facts are that
I agree with you.
Our nation is facing a crippling national debt.
Okay, I don't know how to read that. So yes.
As I stated before, I look forward to working with you.
Mr. Kirkland, my
this committee, and
Republican
your
colleague
staff.
just added $4 trillion to the debt, man. My question
to,
is, you in your testimony proudly spoke of your upbringing on the Navajo Nation, your ties to the nation, hauling water. Speaker Curley's right behind you. Other leaders are as well. One of the things I'm proud to represent is the leadership from the Navajo Nation, brothers and sisters there as well. For too long, America has ignored its trust responsibilities. This would be the first water settlement to fail. My question is a simple one. Is it okay or not that the President of the United States, who gave his commitment to the President of the Navajo Nation and other leaders that he would support the settlement, put $0 in the budget? This is an important question, Madam Chair.
I appreciate the question. I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Madam Chair, I'll yield back. If the answer is not yes, I'm worried about this. You know, my colleague talked about leadership qualities. Being honest and keeping your word matters. And I just certainly hope, Madam Chair, that as we're going through all of this, that we can find an honest way to tell people, if the answer to the Navajo Nation is they're not getting any money, then tell them. So that they can plan, they can budget, we can figure things out to help these people instead of an empty promise. I mean, Madam Chair, maybe I'm just tired.
I think we're all tired.
This is just frustrating. This is just so frustrating.
Thank you, Senator Luján. I am going to reclaim my time here, ask 2 quick questions, and then turn to Senator Cortez Masto and go run and vote, because I do have more that I want to follow on with.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
mentioned the probate backlog and how important that is, not only to us in Alaska. We've got some cases in Alaska that date back to the 1990s and the early 2000s. I know there's cases in the lower 48 that have been open far longer than that. We're basically looking at about a 48,000 unresolved probate backlog, unacceptable by any measures, and I know the Secretary agrees with that. But I just need your commitment to working with me, working with this committee, working within the department to resolve this probate backlog. And I mentioned in my comments that I'm worried about workforce because you can't process these things unless you have people that are dedicated to it. So I just ask for your public commitment today to work with us to address this. This is an injustice that is just, it's been carried forward for just far too long.
Thank you for your question and comment, Senator. As far as the probate, once again, I'm not in the building yet. I look forward to getting there and learning more about this. But as far as the probate is concerned, it's a priority of the Secretary's.
Yeah.
He's spoken with the President about it. I know that the Secretary has recently visited Alaska, and you were able to speak with him about it too. He's got an initiative within the department to tackle that. Typically, as you're well aware, if the Secretary makes a priority of something and the President has chimed in too, that's something that the entire staff and body within the agency is going to focus on. This is one of the things that are at the top of the list. I can't imagine the heartache that some of these constituents of yours are going through, having to wait 5, 10 plus years in many cases to receive what is theirs rightfully. So that's whether that's through advancements in technology, electric record keeping, or just we've got to learn how to build a better mousetrap.
Well,
I
we
look
have
forward
to
working with you on that.
build a better mousetrap, but we have to be processing these while we're still building
Correct,
that, and
yeah.
that is hard to do. But we talk about issues of homelessness and what happens when individuals are forced to move out of the family home because grandma dies, and they have nowhere to go. And there's a perfectly good home, the family home that they all grew up in, that is boarded up and left to just deteriorate. It's a travesty, and it's something that I think we've just said we'll get around to it sooner than later. And in the meantime, good people are being hurt. So it's something that I'm going to prioritize, and I appreciate that the Secretary has, and I need you to do as well. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Cortez Masto and Scoot. I'll be right back. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kirkland, thank you for visiting with me. I appreciate that. And welcome to your family members, everybody here in support, and congratulations on your nomination. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to hold you accountable on a number of issues that are impacting my tribes in Nevada. So I do want to talk about one that is very serious, and it's not just impacting tribes in Nevada, it's really across the country. Public safety in Indian country is already severely underfunded. The Department of Interior's 2024 Tribal Law and Order Act report to Congress stated that the estimated unmet funding need for public safety and justice is over $3 billion. Which includes unmet staffing of over 11,000 law enforcement officers. Yet the President's 2026 budget request calls for cutting $107 million from BIA's public safety and justice account. Now, I know you're not there yet, but you will get into a position where you're going to have to cut based on the President's budget. Can you talk to me about how you are thinking about or what you would plan to do to make those cuts that won't impact law enforcement's ability to combat crimes like drug trafficking and violence against women that we see across tribal nations?
Thank you for your question, Senator. I think, first of all, it's unfortunate, but tribal nations have always been asked to do more with less. And that's very unfortunate. I look forward to, as you said, once sworn into the position, to getting in the building and taking a deep dive, taking a comprehensive look at where there are opportunities to streamline, where there's opportunities to have more cross agency collaboration, working across different jurisdictions, how we can better enact training, recruitment, and also keeping those individuals within our systems. I can't imagine how expensive it is to retrain officers or law enforcement officers specifically once they're in place and go someplace else. But most importantly, I'm going to look for ideas from you and your staff. As Chairman Schatz mentioned very elegantly, he's looking for someone that if they don't have answers, is willing to look around. I'm going to rely on your staff and yourself and your tribal leaders within your state for ideas. I want to work with those tribes and find out what they think might work best. Ultimately, it's most important to exercise their self-determination and sovereignty, and that's what I think we can do more about the Department of Interior.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let me just say, there is already a challenge with the ability to recruit and retain qualified law enforcement officers to serve tribal communities. And with less money now, $100 million to help keep these tribes safe, you're going to have a challenge. And so I really hope that as you're addressing this issue and make it a priority, you do come to Congress to talk to us about the challenges that you're seeing and be honest about it, because I'm already hearing it from my tribes in Nevada, and I know I also hear it from the BIA officers themselves.
Yes,
it's a problem. Let me also talk a little bit about a couple of issues that are unique to some of my tribes. In Nevada, several tribes have had the rug pulled out from under them by BIA regarding funding for criminal detention services. In July of 2024, a number of tribes received letters from BIA OJS stating that following an audit of their 638 contracts, BIA would no longer provide detention services funding those tribes. And now I've been working with BIA to rectify this critical public safety issue. But unfortunately, there's been minimal communication from DOI to the tribes on this issue and how to address it. So I am hoping that, one, if you are confirmed to put in this position, that you're committed to helping us address this issue and work toward ensuring that there is an active line of communication with DOI and the tribes on this very issue. Would you commit to that?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Another issue that's unique to Nevada, the Shoshone-Paiute tribe of Duck Valley Reservation is on the border of Nevada and Idaho. They have had a school there, and for generations have taught some of our tribal children there. It is on federal land, and it's operated by the BIA. Over the years, it was discovered that the BIA improperly disposed of fuels and pesticides, including 2 herbicides, that make up Agent Orange on that reservation right by the school, where the school is. Hundreds of children have been exposed to these chemicals, and over 100 tribal members have died due to cancer, which is an extraordinary number for a tribe with around only 3,000 members. Time and time again, the BIA has failed to meet its assessment deadlines and ultimately failed to meet their promise to remediate this program. As you can only imagine, continued delays have dire consequences to the health and safety of the tribal members and their children. Will you commit to quickly addressing the remediation of this issue if you are confirmed?
Senator, thank you for the question. I look forward to, if confirmed, quickly being brought up to speed on the Duck Valley Reservation issue. I look forward to working with your staff and figuring out what we can do there.
Thank you. And then one final question. I appreciate the work that you did under the first Trump administration with respect to the Not Invisible Act. Thank you for that. Here's my concern. Chair Murkowski and I both wrote a letter concerned that the report on recommendations to address murdered and missing Indigenous women and children, that report, which is supposed to be made to the public, was originally put on the DOJ website. When President Trump took office this time, he took it down. Trying to understand why and how do we get that report back up for transparency and for the public to be aware of. Would you work with us in trying to do just that and publicly post it?
Senator, I appreciate that question. I agree with you. It is a very important issue. Obviously, we don't control the Department of Justice's website, but transparency is of the utmost importance in order to gain the respect or trust of anyone. Transparency is where it starts. I mean, I don't know how much transparent I could be. You guys all know how much money's in my checking account right now, probably more so than my wife does.
Well, she knows now.
So I'm very happy to work with you and your staff on transparency issues.
Thank you.
I guess since no one's handing it over, it's obviously my choice. So,
Yes.
anyways, thank you. And Mr. Kirkland, thank you for being here. Can you kind of explain a little bit about your feelings towards Indian country?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Look, my feelings for Indian country are they're sort of tough to explain, right? I think, and maybe you've experienced this as well. I think oftentimes people expect or want to tell you how to feel towards Indian country, right? They may feel like you don't or haven't lived through the same experiences they have. So it's oftentimes difficult to put into words. I can tell you that when in Indian country, whether that is in Oklahoma or Montana or within the Four Sacred Mountains of the Navajo Reservation, there's a comfort there. There's a peace, more relaxed, and it's a feeling that you want to share. There's a pride there, and I hope to be able to honor those that have come before me and expressing and giving this pride to others. I think that President Trump and Secretary Burgum love and appreciate and respect Indian country. I think they care. I've sat in meetings with the president where they weren't public. It wasn't for a TV or a reporter. And the authenticity that he's been able to show, you oftentimes can't put it to words.
Right.
And that's oftentimes how I feel about Indian country. And I hope to be able to honor the trust relationship that the federal government is responsible for, and to advance self-determination and tribal sovereignty.
And what tribe do you come from?
Navajo Nation.
Navajo. See, and I'm Cherokee, and I never knew I was special for being Cherokee until I came to D.C. Because where I'm from, everybody's Indian or wants to be. And when I came up here, Tom Cole was the first one that came up to me and said, "Congratulations, we just doubled the size of our Native American caucus. Native American caucus as back in 2013. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I'm Chickasaw and you're Cherokee." And I said, "Yeah, we taught you how to read and write." No, I'm kidding. And we joked about it because sometimes there's a misunderstanding. But what they don't understand about Indian country, and tell me if I'm wrong, is we don't look at the world through an R or D lens. We look at it from our heritage perspective. Would you agree with that?
Yes, Senator.
And sometimes people that aren't from Indian country and they're not Native, they don't understand it. They don't get it because politics is their world, and they want to make a big difference about it. They want to make a big thing about it. But at the end of the day, tribal issues, it's a federal responsibility we have. And so you can separate the politics out of it because we have an obligation. And in your role, I have to ask, are you going to fulfill that obligation?
Yes, Senator. There's no R or D by any tribe's name. Look, this is politics are pushed aside when managing or keeping any trust responsibility or a treaty obligation. That's right. This is personal for you and I. These are our people. These are our tribal. Why the Hopi are going to be different from the Navajo or the Chickasaw or the Cherokee. There's a trust relationship that has to be honored between us and the federal government.
And it's drastically different. I mean, all of our tribes in Oklahoma are going to be all different from the tribes in the Midwest. And I think one of the coolest things that you have the ability to do is you get to learn all those different needs. And when you go in there with a background like yourself, and with Native people at mind at the front of your mind in any decision you make. You have an opportunity to actually get to know them and get to know what their unique challenges are. I just hope on this, in this committee, that we try to leave the politics out of it and just put Indian country first. I mean, that's what our responsibility is here. That's why I think this committee is unique, because if there's ever a committee that works in a real bipartisan manner, it's this committee. And we have to be careful that we don't separate that, because as I repeat myself again, we have a federal obligation. And regardless if you're native or you're not, if we're in this position of authority, if we're in this position to actually affect that, we need to understand that and just all be in the same boat working together. So thank you for standing up. Thank you for your family too, to going through this with you, because it's a challenge. And your ability to continue to stay in the fight for Indian country is commendable. So God bless you.
Thank you, Senator.
Are we finished? Or you want me to recognize you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So appreciate this hearing and for the consideration of your nomination, Mr. Kirkland. Congratulations on that, and to your family. Protecting Native communities is one of our most important trust responsibilities, and one of the biggest threats to Indian country right now is fentanyl. We have a couple of billboards here about the problem. 12 indicted recently in a big drug enforcement operation on the Yakama Nation. It had so much fentanyl, you could have literally killed everybody as a member of the Yakama tribe. We had a similar incident up in Bellingham a few years ago. So just this week, the DEA, in partnership with the Yakama Nation, announced charges against 12 individuals for trafficking fentanyl on the Yakama Reservation. And in February, the nation was selected to put this into an Operation Overdrive investigation. So over that 120-day operation, DEA worked closely with the BIA, the Yakama Nation, the Wapato Police Department to see 7,000 pounds of marijuana, 300 pounds of meth, 25 pounds of cocaine, 7 pounds of fentanyl, and over 4,700 fentanyl-laced pills. And according to the special agent in charge, as I said, would have yielded enough lethal doses to kill everyone in the whole county. So this operation also was important to stopping the flow, and in Yakima County, in the community, has experienced 19 overdose deaths since February, 12 in March, and 12 deaths by the end of June. So we are doing everything we can to work together in a collaborative fashion, and I hope that you will work with us and my colleague who just left, Senator Markwayne Mullin, on the Parity for Tribal Law Enforcement Act. This is really important legislation that helps tribes recruit and retain law enforcement, allowing them to offer federal benefits that are currently available only to state, local, and federal law enforcement. So will you commit to work with Senator Mullin and myself on this legislation and try to get it implemented?
I look forward to becoming better educated on all legislation that you and your colleagues are prioritizing, and specifically on this legislation you speak of. I look forward to learning more about it and working with you and your staff.
Okay, if you could take a look at it and give us a little more specificity before your vote, that would be great. Currently, tribal public safety funded at just 13% of the total need, and the president's budget proposes an additional 15% cut to BIA public safety. So that's why we want to understand, where you will be on these programs, and whether you will commit to doing that. How will you fight back against the administration and OMB efforts to shortchange Indian country? What do you think right now you can do to help an administration that may not be as familiar with the impacts of these budget cuts?
I think the first thing, once again, I can start by saying thank you, Senator, for the question, for your work on the committee and the time that we were able to share it together. I know you specifically made an effort to visit with me, and I appreciate that, and appreciate the time spent with your staff as well. I think when it comes to prioritizing the budget in the Office of Indian Affairs and how that is allocated throughout Indian country, Look, there's a trust relationship that's sacred there. There's treaty obligations that we've got to maintain and uphold. I think that opening up lines of communication to effectively communicate that is first and foremost of the most importance. And collaborating with the tribal leaders to prioritize what needs they see are the most important. And specifically when it comes to law enforcement and protecting our tribal communities, I think, whatever dollars are allocated towards the Office of Indian Affairs by Congress, we're going to work to make sure that we get the best investment, whether that is allocated towards resources or law and order. And I can commit to looking forward to working with you and your staff to ensure that that's done.
On hatchery issues, in the Inflation Reduction Act, we funded $240 million in hatchery funding for tribes. And while you might think of this as geographic, I can guarantee you my colleague from Alaska wants more fish production, period. So I think 27 tribes were deemed eligible to receive $2 million in funding. Many of the eligible tribes have not received the funding yet. So what will you do to help us get hatchery dollars out the door?
Thank you for the question. I think when in terms of
this is in BIA particularly.
I think in terms of BIA in general, I think that there are a lot of passionate individuals that work there and career service people that serve any country and love their jobs. I think that ultimately, though, there are also a number of protocols and processes that need to be looked at closely. We need to find where the bottlenecks are and figure out how to make them more efficient. When there are vital services that need to be acted on, when there are funds that have been approved that need to be pushed out, we need to work together to make sure those are done in a timely manner.
Great.
And there's no question that there's room for improvement there.
Great. Well, we definitely want to see those hatchery dollars. And then I'm pretty sure you believe in commitment to a trust and treaty responsibility for those tribes that have, in general, government-to-government responsibilities.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. Mr. Kirkland, we focus a lot on public safety in Indian country, and in Alaska we have what was described as a rural public safety crisis. This was Attorney General Barr's own words after he came to Alaska to visit. In the FY24 Interior Appropriations Bill, I was able to direct BIA to conduct tribal consultation on the budgetary needs of tribal law enforcement. This includes everything from wellness courts, other essential justice needs, but we asked them to report back on the available funding, whether it's at DOI or elsewhere, for tribes in the PL 280 states. BIA did this consultation, so they've done that part of it, but we still have yet to see the report. So I know you're not in a position to get that for me, but I would ask that if you are confirmed that you can ensure that we get the report on this consultation, because I think it's going to be instructive in terms of, you mentioned navigating some bottlenecks here with Senator Cantwell. We're going to need to navigate some bottlenecks, including those that may be internal to BIA to support public safety and justice in Alaska, and this report's going to be very important. So I just need your commitment, your awareness. It's out there. We got to get it out.
Yes, Senator. I quite frankly, I don't know why they would have the consultation if they weren't willing to provide the outcomes of that, right? The whole goal of a meaningful consultation is to come to an outcome that works best for both tribes and the trustee, and I think that we definitely can work together to try to figure out where those reports are and be transparent and get those to you as quickly as possible.
Okay, we will look for that expeditiously then. We talked a little bit about interagency communication when you were in my office. The Department of Interior has been the main department that works directly with tribes and the Native communities to implement federal government trust and treaty obligations. But as we know, it expands far beyond the Department of Interior. It's absolutely over in HHS. Secretary Kennedy is well aware of that in the role that he has at IHS, but it's literally across all departments. And so it was Senator Daines that kind of acknowledged the org chart within BIA. It is extensive. It's extensive. I was going to use a word like crazy, but it's complex. And so being able to work collaboratively with the federal agencies and the different departments, you're going to be overseeing BIA, but in order to be effective for American Indians, Alaska Natives, Native Hawaiians, you're going to have to figure out how you work with the folks in HUD to deal with so many of the tribal housing issues that we have. You're going to have to be able to deal with the folks over at HHS in addressing the fact that when it comes to healthcare disparities, our statistics are awful among our Native populations in terms of life expectancy, diseases, things like suicide and substance abuse. So I would like to hear, just briefly here, how you feel, or whether you feel that it is important to do this kind of collaboration, or do you just work within your own rather extensive org chart?
I think in order to fully advocate for tribal nations, for our Alaska Natives, ANCs, or even our Native Hawaiian brothers and sisters, you can't simply silo the responsibilities of the office to the Department of Interior. I think that in advocating for all of Indian country, that includes working with HUD, that includes working with HHS. I mean, I can say that we ruined the Valentine's Day for the White House's Office of Intergovernmental Affairs because they were connected with HHS on a number of issues that were coming to deadlines of importance. Calling the Deputy Secretary over at HUD, I look forward to doing that to talk about tribal housing issues or any concerns that an ANC may have or not have. So cross collaboration is something that it's a part. It's not doing anything extra or going above and beyond. It's part of the duties and responsibilities of the Assistant Secretary.
Well, and your I guess background for this position, Senator Schatz spoke to it a little bit, but I think one of the things that you actually do bring to the table is having worked within the previous Trump administration. Basically, what we need is somebody at BIA who can pick up the phone and call a secretary and say, we got a problem here. And you know what? This problem has been shoved under the rug for too many years by too many administrations, maybe even from the prior Trump administration. And being able to get the attention on these matters that have been left to founder for too long. I've been on this committee since I came to the United States Senate. I think I'm probably the longest, maybe I'm not the longest tenured member. Maybe Senator Inouye was, I don't know. But I've been here for a long time. And it troubles me deeply that we go year after year, we go Congress after Congress, we go administration after administration, and we wring our hands and we say, we haven't made any headway. We've been working on water settlements that take 100 years practically. We are looking at health disparity statistics that are as bad now as when we started. We are dealing with issues of poverty and, for gosh sakes, basic water needs. We look at our educational outcomes. And I don't think it's because we have people who don't care here in Congress. I think we care deeply. But there is a frustration with how that level of caring translates into budgets, because I'm on I chair the Interior Appropriations Committee, but on the Authorizing Committee, and then translates into commitment on the ground. And so we need people who are going to carry the burdens of Native people and the challenges that they have faced oftentimes for generations, and champion them and get people to pay attention in the administration. Because I think you're going to find that the people behind this dais care deeply about it. You heard the passion in Senator Luján's voice. He's not angry at you. I think we're frustrated because we know the need and we care about solving problems. And we need to know your commitment to solving these problems with us. And we're counting on you, whether it's being able to speak directly to the president and capture his heart on this, or wherever it is in that political landscape that's out there. That's more of a comment than a question. But I think that this is an important part of what you're going to be tasked to do. So when I ask the question about interagency communication, it's broader than that. It's not just being able to pick up the phone and know who to call. It's to be able to put that urgency to work with me. Let's find a solution that will work. I want to get a couple more asks from you, and then I'll turn to Senator Luján. Okay, but we still have 2 more votes. Believe it or not, we are bouncing up and down. Next time I'll take the kids and we'll get a little exercise. But the Tribal Climate Resilience Awards, I worked pretty hard on the bipartisan infrastructure law. We had good investments for Indian country in that, and one of the things that we were able to include was $216 million for BIA's Tribal Climate Resilience Program. I've described to you the situation in many of our communities, whether it's threats from erosion or thawing permafrost, what it means to communities like Newtok, Quinnahock, Napakiak. They're living with these threats every day. And we've heard a lot about the pauses in these awards. We have reached out to BIA and to the Secretary. We have made some progress, but we're still continuing to hear about funding pauses. And so I just need to know that if confirmed, you're going to be able to work with me, my staff, and the staff of all of us here, as well as those on the Interior Approps Subcommittee, to release these funds. Again, these have been authorized. We have appropriated to them. You have clear need out in the communities, and we would like to see them addressed. So just putting that also on your radar. Last question for you. Yesterday was a pretty tough day. It was hard. This rescissions package cut millions of dollars in different areas, some in global health, but also $1 billion in public broadcasting. And as you know, there are real funds that help tribal and rural public radio stations. And I spoke to an amendment yesterday that was pretty important. We just gotten an alert in the afternoon of a 7.3 earthquake that struck off the coast of Alaska around Sand Point. Tsunami alert, and it was public radio that basically told people get to higher ground, get out of the way of a potential tsunami, and then gave them the all clear coming back. Our subsistence fishermen that are on the rivers right now, out in the ocean in Alaska, they're all relying on good things coming from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And when I talk to Alaskans and they're listening to the weather report that's going to let them know whether they can safely go out on the fishing grounds, or when they're waiting for the 8:15 a.m. call to find out where the ice jam is on the Yukon and how far from my village it's going to be, and do I need to get my snow machine out of the way so that my means of transportation doesn't get flooded, they don't think that this is some radical leftist propagandist plot. They say, wow, this is like, help me live through my day. So I continue to be a strong supporter of what we have with our public broadcasting and how they broadcast. KYUK has a program in English and UPIC, and so it's it's a great blend to help continue the language that is so important out there. A lot of examples you're going to hear from people on this dais here, but what we know is that there is a promise from the administration to reallocate funding from the Department of Interior, from the BIA account, to provide one-time support for tribal public media stations. The concern that I have is that's one-time support. We understand that it is a competitive grant funding program, so my stations in Alaska, about less than half of them are tribal stations. Others are not, so they won't have any access to these grants. So the little station that advertised the tsunami down in Unalaska won't have any help or support from this, but others may. But the concern that I have is that we're going to have a situation where you are tasked to find money within the BIA budget to do this temporary funding for these tribal stations for 1 year, but you're going to have to take it out of funds that have already been either obligated or certainly tribal entities are relying on this. And so we can't have a situation where it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't ask you to have a solution, have an answer for me now. Obviously, this is all very new. It may or may not be resolved by the time you get through the confirmation process. But know that from the perspective of where Indian country comes down in terms of support for public broadcasting, it's everyone from NCAI, it's AFN, it is, I've got all kinds of letters that we will submit for the record so that you do have them. But know that these are important for a host of different reasons, and I, for one, in my capacity here on the authorizing committee and on the appropriating, I'm not going to just settle back and say that so many in our rural areas and in our tribal communities will not have access to whether it is life-saving notifications or the opportunity to learn in your native heritage language. If you have any comments on that, I'm happy to take them.
Well, I appreciate your concern, your question, and I fully, especially appreciate I've learned the longer the question or the statement, the less time I have to reply. So I appreciate that as well. I look forward to working with you on this issue and finding out where things are, learning more about it. I hope to do it sooner rather than later because that means I've been confirmed. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the questions from the committee members who had to run to vote. I know that those are continuing to rack up. I look forward to, if I'm lucky enough to being confirmed, to working with all committee members. I look forward to working with the senator from New Mexico as well and his staff. So I appreciate your time, Senator.
Well, we thank you for coming before the committee, for fielding all of our questions. I know that other members may have questions. We'll hold the record open for 24 hours to receive those. To you and your family, thank you, and you guys have done a super, super, super great job. And happy birthday to your dad. Thank you, and with that, the committee stands adjourned.